some of the more surprising and I found really interesting and useful features of the book were about so dancing with structure and lack of structure. So when I think of structure, I think of like deadlines. So when you are in the process of creating something, obviously deadlines are relevant. Time of day, right? There's only so many hours in the day where one can stay in the groove or in this like readiness to receive. Have you ever found yourself in that mode where you're kind of grinding, like here we are, like, okay, I'm not coming home for dinner tonight. It's the next, we're going to push. We're like, put on the coffee pot kind of thing.
A lot over the course of my life, a lot, not as much now. And one of the things that I discovered through working on the book was the phases of work. We're not required to treat the different phases of work in the same way. Whereas before, I did. Before, everything was in this state of play. Everything had a wide open time schedule. It happens when it happens. And if it takes 2 years or 3 years, it doesn't matter. It's not about that. It's only about this thing has to be great. And what I came to realize in working on the book is that there are different phases. And the first phase is this seed collecting phase, which is kind of an ongoing part of life in general. I do that always, whether I'm working on something or not. I'm always in the seed collecting phase, and there's no deadline or it's just anything that interests me that I think I want to learn more about or has potential to be something, something. I hear something, think, I'd like to read more about that. Or I wonder if there's a movie about that. Is there a movie about that? If not, maybe there's a movie to be made. Again, this is something I want in my life. Let's see if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then maybe that's something interesting to pursue. But I know that the desire is there because I have it. So in the seed phase, there's no deadlines. It's just a wide open part. And then the next phase is called the experimentation phase, where you start experimenting to see what the seeds want to do. You're involved, but you're more of you're not really dictating the action. You're setting the stage for something to happen, but it's not about you yet. So it'd be like the equivalent of you'd plant the seed, you would water it, you would make sure it was in the sun, and you'd wait. So you're involved, but you can't make it grow, And then when it sprouts and it grows, or if it turns into a plant, then you can look at the plants like, okay, how does this plant, what's the potential of this plant? And then that the third phase is the crafting phase, where it's like, okay, I have this plant. Maybe I'm going to trim it, or maybe I'm going to combine it with these other plants to make something else with it. Now it's like material that you have. And then finally is the completion or finishing phase, which is the final edit, getting to the version of it. The version of it that's the one that you can share with the world if that's something you're going to do. And I've come to realize that by the time you're going into the completion phase, you can have a deadline and it won't hurt the project. In fact, it might help the project. And I didn't know that before. So I've worked on projects that have gone longer than they necessarily needed to, and maybe not in the best interest of the project, because I didn't know that. I didn't understand that the timing of that, because I am so aware of the necessity in the experimental phase to not have a deadline, that I assumed that held through the whole project. And it's not a clear phase one finishes and then you start phase two finishes and then you start phase three. You move back and forth between them. I'm collecting seeds all the time. I'm always in phase one. And then probably to some degree, there's always some version of experimentation going on. Maybe not now, but if something's on a list of things I want to look at, hopefully I'll get get to the list and give them some experimentation and see what they can turn into. And then if they do turn into something, then they get to the crafting phase where it's more, okay, now I have this thing. What do I know about this kind of thing? What can I match this with? What can I use this for? How can I be involved as a craftsman? And by the end of the crafting phase or deep into the crafting phase, you can start seeing the end. You can start seeing an end, and then you can even dictate an end. But I recommend, if you do, just dictate it for you, not for anyone else, because if something comes up where you learn, if you set a deadline, a public deadline, and then a new discovery happens along the way and you realize, oh, this could actually be much better than I thought, but I need more time, it's harder to do that if you set the deadline. So I would say have an internal deadline to finish it. That said, if an unusual situation comes up and it's better for everything not to meet that deadline, it's one of those rules that you set the rule to break it if it's what's best for the project. But that was a new thing for me, and it helped me a lot.